Do you feel that in a time when we are more connected than ever, we are drifting away from real human connection, especially to ourselves? I do. Hi, I'm Leticia Latino, and I want to invite you to join me and my very inspiring guests in exploring ways to reconnect to your essence, to your definite purpose, to what makes you tick. Are you ready? Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Back to Basics, Reconnecting to the Essence of You. Today's guest is Mich Carpenter, an internationally recognized spiritual medium, energy healer, telepathic communicator, and channel for the Council of Faith. Mitch has dedicated her life to guiding individuals through deep transformational healing by connecting with spirit, uncovering unconscious energy patterns, and helping people release emotional blockages that no longer serve them. We are taping this almost a day apart because she's in Australia, right?
New Zealand.
Oh my God,
even close.
Even more further away. I love New Zealand. We have to talk about that later. But so we're just making this happen in a full, almost 24-hour difference in taping, which makes it very exciting.
It's very exciting. And I always say, like, whenever I'm on Zoom, I always say, guess what? The future looks bright.
Yes, it does. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So tell us a little bit about your origin story. Are you originally from New Zealand? Where were you born? And I'm usually interested in what were you passionate about? And obviously, somebody that has these, let's say, abilities, I also would love for you to share. How did you start getting in touch with this other world, energy world, so to speak?
Amazing. So stop me if you have any questions, because I love to share just a bit about my background, which you've asked, because I feel like it really, in the truth of who I am, everyone has these abilities. Everyone. We're born with it. So I was born in Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe. And then we left to go and live in South Africa. And I'm a South African who immigrated to New Zealand just over 9 years ago. Wow. I love South Africa. I love my country. I love my people. And I just love New Zealand. New Zealand's been such a part of my evolving as well. A big part of my journey comes from a background of just even the immigration with my parents. My dad was a young Rhodesian soldier. My mom had a lot of fears. I remember as a young kid, my mom used to lock us in the bedroom with her, myself and my older brother. And these are patterns that I've learned along the way that we have. You know, we're so we're energy, but we hold emotions as human beings. And part of the fears that my mom held was what I took on over life. And what I remember as a young girl was I used to sleep with my one arm and one leg, and I'm going back to when I was probably 2 years old, over my mom like this. Fast forward to when I was an adult and in relationships, I used to sleep the same, like with partners. I'd say, you know, can you just lie? And I realized it was kind of like my safety blanket. But I had to teach my body to not be that way anymore. And it was just because I didn't feel safe. My parents used to have, I remember, explosive arguments. You know, it felt very volatile. I used to wake up and hear the fighting. And I went through life not knowing my dad was what I would call a weekend alcoholic. And I didn't realize this until I was not even a teenager, more an adult going into this line of work. One day it just clicked. I was like, gosh, alcohol's always been a big part of our lives, but not a good part of our lives, because when my dad got drunk, you just never knew. He never ever hit us, but his mouth was just on fire. I had bulimia when I was a teenager. I was sexually abused by my uncle when I was a young girl. I lost my best friend at the age of 16 and a half. She died in hospice, and I didn't know at the time that how I was being guided. A big part of my journey is going from being a victim of life. You know, we would term ourselves survivors, I think, in some way. but kind of finding what are the victories. And I was a proper victim for a very long time. I want to share my story. I want to tell people, like, this happened to me, and this happened to me, and this happened to me. Yet I've come to realize it happened for me. And when I was in hospice, I remember sitting as a young teenager looking at the counselor on the couch who had just counseled my friend's parents. And I was thinking, how is this woman surrounded by death and she's not devastated? I remember that like so strongly. And hospice became a part of my journey later on, which you see how we're guided. We're always guided. But sometimes the crazy thing I think about us being humans, Leticia, is that we need like proper wake-up calls, which is ridiculous, and I say need. That was part of my journey. I was in and out of relationships where I just was desperate to be loved because on some level, I felt like my parents didn't love me in the way that I wanted to be loved. Like I say, my mom had a lot of fear. She was very angry. And when I was in my early 20s, I knocked over and killed a young girl. And I come from a sales rep background, and I'd looked down to put a straw in, and she misjudged. I was on my side of my side of the road, and she misjudged, and she ran across the road. And I was in and out of court for 2 years, and I was acquitted. But the beautiful part of, thank you, it was, some days I'm able to speak about it, and some days there's still some grieving in it. The beautiful part of what had happened was her mom had called me. And this young girl was 14, I came to discover, and her mom had phoned me about 3 months after the accident to find out how I was doing. And it broke me. It was just, it was, our minds can't comprehend that kind of compassion. At the time, I couldn't. So that specific year in 1998, I'd gone through a really bad breakup. I'd been made redundant, and then 2 months later, this all happened within 6 months. So just trauma. And I just suppressed it. But my body, I had bronchitis, I had laryngitis, I had throat infections, I had bladder infections. And, it was in the day and age where nobody said, go and see someone, or nobody said, well, do you ever think that there's a bigger picture here? And it was clearly just not meant to be. We did grow up as survivors, and we grew up being tough. And I think there's a little way of knowing that builds resilience. Often as the adults that we are, and I hear this with clients, well, that's just the way my parents were. And that's what I came to realize. It's just the way that my parents were. But I was holding on to that big secret of being sexually abused. And, my uncle was very much a part of our family. And how do I tell this? Who's going to believe me? So for years and years and years, and when I was a teenager, I realized that it was wrong. And then I was angry. But I was angry with men because my dad had affairs. I was angry at myself because there was all this raw emotion that I didn't know what to do with. So I don't believe that teenagers, we have this typical statement, typical teenager, No, teenagers are hitting out or going quiet because they're hurting. Something else is going on within their world. And it's sometimes deeper than what we even think as parents. I'm learning through my children, and my children are my biggest teachers. Unconsciously, they are blah, 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 giving me back to me. But we make it about them. So fast forward to the age of 33, after I'd knocked over and killed this young girl, my pattern was to run or be in, fight, flight, fright. And I could do all three really well. Either be, not being able to speak up, or I had a real mouth on me, my defense mechanisms, or I would just, out of relationships, I've got to run. And the big part of me that was in fear was the part that was trying to control. I was always trying to control and always trying to be the nice person in relationships, always trying to be the over pleaser. And that comes with a lot of, it comes with a lot of hard work.
Yes.
Because it's hard work to continuously please everybody else. But I learned that from my mom. So fast forward to being 33 years old, and I was married with a young daughter at the time, and my ex-husband did the best thing for me. He ended up having an affair. And obviously it threw my world out of chaos into chaos. But it was the best thing, because I started to decide that I needed to look at what my wounds were. Now we can come into this life with abandonment wounds, because that's where the intergenerational trauma kicks in. My mom felt abandoned most of her life. My mom had these like real pains. As an example, she had sinus for most of her life, frustrated, angry. These are, if you just think of emotional blockages, well, our body, we're not born with these things, but we can start to just repeat, pause, repeat, the thoughts, and the emotions are there. The emotions are what I believe is what is important to release. So I started then, funny enough, I went to go see a clairvoyant when I found out my husband was having an affair. And it took me about 1.5 years, 2 years. And my mom kept saying, she knew the patterns. She's like, he's having an affair. And I was like, no, he's not. No, he's having an affair. Because I didn't want to believe on some level that this would happen. And I went to go see a clairvoyant. And all I remember was this young gentleman saying to me, Michelle, you don't know how to love yourself. And I remember thinking, I want to throat punch you right now. Like, what do you mean? It's like, what do you do with that information?
What do you think you are?
Exactly. And then he suggested go on this weekend retreat. His mom was, she used to run a portion of hospice, and it was life-changing. And this was 9 years later after I knocked over and killed this young girl. And my facilitator got me to feel how I felt, and my head couldn't comprehend. I'm like, what do you mean? It happened. It's done. How did you feel? And she kept going, how did you feel? And I started to cry, and I started to chunk, and I started to wail, like literally my heart cracked. And that night, that weekend, I was just oblivious, because I lived my life disassociated, based on the trauma, based on, just a few things that I've shared with you already. So I was out of my body, but talking. And she got me to feel. And then that started my journey of then going to become a part-time caregiver for hospice. I studied counseling skills. I then went to go study neuro-linguistic programming. I then got married. My second husband and I have had karma, wounds from the past. It has been hard. It has been tough, but we've stayed. There's been a love that keeps us together. And there's been a learning of true compassion, but for ourselves, first and foremost, because we've both been depressed. We both have had PTSD, working through our PTSD. And this, as I started letting go, this trauma, these levels, these layers of emotions that I had no idea that I was holding on to. And it became my victim story. It became my story of, well, I was a single mother and, he left me. Like, how dare he left me? And then I realized, actually, I'm not wanting to speak about him like that because it happened for me. And that's where I feel like we take our power back. That's where I feel like we become more empowered, where we can speak from a place of honesty, authenticity. And it was probably one of the greatest things that happened for me. And it took me a long time to find forgiveness, not only for my ex-husband, but for myself. But as I started to let go and I dived deep into, going for counseling, when I did my yoga teacher training, there was more. There were these levels and layers that were so stored in me. I want to say in the womb, actually, because we take on a lot in the womb without even realizing that we do. And I started to then hear different voices. I started to counsel, and I really believe the universe has a great sense of humor, because my first clients, probably my first 10 clients were all sexually abused young women. And then I started to realize that this is a mirror for me, because I could still feel my heart. I could still feel my body contracting when I would hear their stories. And I'd be like, whoo, we play these parts, we play these roles. So as a counselor, obviously I would stay in my role of helping them, yet at the same time I could still feel parts of my nervous system contracting, my body going, whoo. So I knew that there was more healing for me to do, more forgiveness, more layers of refinding my compassion, because we're all born with compassion. That's why I say I really believe that we're born with these gifts and these abilities, but based on our lives, we shut them down. And I go here because the head tries to comprehend, compute, we delete, we distort. And when we find our sense of calm again, then we start to realize how connected we always have been. So I want to share more, but I want to just ask, is there any questions?
No. I mean, it's yes, there's a lot. I don't like that, but it's incredible because this really, and usually with my guests, we go into the journey and connect it to what makes us tick. But in your case, it's really a discovering journey, and I think it's one that we can all relate, because everybody, as you're saying, everybody, I'm sure, is thinking about their own open wounds and their own things that they maybe have or have not dealt with. And the importance, I think, of facing the truth of that wound with an open eyes.
Yes. And an open heart. That's the biggest thing. I say to my clients, just think of it as a vault, like a vault, our hearts are a vault, and we're opening up the vault, and it's scary, like what's in there. But what I love is that we don't have to sit in it. We can process pretty quickly, because the heart feels, and it has such a beautiful magnitude of knowing. And like I was just thinking of a memory of how, because there's a beautiful book called The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. And, he had worked a lot with Vietnam vets and how our body remembers. And I was a dancer, so that's where my bulimia started. And my bulimia was a long road, a long ride of just reteaching myself to not hate myself. That it was such a habit to just eat, purge, and then go and vomit, and it took me about 10 years on and off to just say, no, stop, and go and look in the mirror. I love you, body, I love you, Mich. But it was a real learning again to have to, and it still is, it's still a programming that not that I have bulimia, but it's like that critical voice is so easy. But to go back to the body keeps the score, and my dad wasn't a hugger. He was a patter on the back. He would like hug me and pat me. So when people would hug me and they would pat me, my whole body would go, oh, don't pat me like a dog. I remember thinking that, like, don't pat me, hug me. That's the kind of emotion that I wanted. I wanted somebody to hug me, to hold me. Now, when we're in fight or flight, that's often the hardest part. Is that, we want to run. But if you can hold somebody when they're in fight or flight and teach their body that it's okay, it's safe, I've got you, even hold their hand. And that's what when I talk about my husband now, we've taught each other that. We've taught each other, because he's like, just leave me, I need to get out of here. And men are differently wired to women. So obviously I'm not going to hold him and say, it's okay, I've got you, because he's going to fight me. But he's taught me, don't come back after me. And I'm like, blah, 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 blah. Yes, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, just let me be, And I'm like, but I just want to talk about this now. And he, just let me be. So I've learned to give him space. So do you see how, there's such a relearning based on how we felt as children, and based on what we perhaps needed as children. My mom needed to be nourished. Her mom was I think my nana, perhaps without even knowing or feeling or having the diagnosis, but I think my nana was bipolar. But she grew up with a mom who wanted to kill her. So my mom took that on some level. My mom became angry. My nana was the person who was always packing her bags and coming to live with us and leaving my grandfather. So there's something in that. And when I was told to go and see a psychiatrist when I knocked over and killed this young girl, I didn't feel heard, Leticia. And I think that's such a big part of who we are as human beings. You know, when we're in fight or flight, we often never heard. Again, just holding somebody's hand. And when I went to go see this woman, I expressed the history of my grandmother, who was always in hospitals on medication. And she said, I'm going to give you one medication that's an antidepressant that's going to make your breast milk. And I was sitting there thinking, what? I don't want my breast to milk. I'm 24 years old. And the other medication is going to make your stomach work. And I took the script and I walked out, and by some inner strength, I took it and I threw it away. And that night I went, and I was on holiday, and my friend said, how did it go? And I sobbed. And I had that cry, that, and she just held me. And she held me, and I cried for about 2 hours. And that helped me on some beautiful way of knowing that I was being held, I was being loved. So fast forward to becoming a medium. When I was counseling, I remember seeing this little baby in a client's lap. Oh, and I want to cry because it was such such a moment.
Oh, that's your emotion right there.
Such tears of gratitude, because it was such a beautiful moment of noticing how, because I didn't know that we all have these gifts. I didn't know that I had these gifts, but I saw this baby in a white dress, and my client looked at me shocked. And she hadn't expressed this in our sessions. And she said, Michelle, how do you know this? I described the baby to her. And she said, how do you know this? How do you know this? And I said, I can see her. And she said, Michelle, my baby was stillborn. And the dress you're describing was the dress that I had on her. And so these are tears of gratitude, because it was such a beautiful moment that I got to share with this client, and my heart just feels this, because I have these beautiful moments daily with clients, and I am a Cancerian, so my tears, it's just who I am.
Yeah.
And I used to berate myself. I used to try and stop myself and judge myself, and say, I'm so sorry, and apologize to you. I'm so sorry, I'm crying, but it's just so expressive, in tears.
Absolutely. I feel the story by just seeing your and hearing your tears. I'm sure the audience too. So I thank you for being authentic and just not containing yourself, because it's powerful.
Thank you. Thank you. And so, yes, this is just how I love to teach. I love to empower others that it's okay. It's all okay in the moment. And, we get through these moments. The biggest thing with depression is, we suppress those emotions because we're in fight, flight, fright. And depression just becomes something that is not really true. It is true for us. It is true for the human that's in the depression. But we can come out of the depression. But it takes hard work. I'm not going to bullshit it. It takes freaking hard work, and it's not over-analyzing in the hard work. It's allowing ourselves to find someone. I always say, I'm walking with you on the journey. I'm holding your hand, but I'm not your crutch. That for me is so pivotal in being a therapist, because sometimes we can walk with someone for 6 months to a year. Sometimes I can walk with someone for one session, and that for me is an honor. When I'm channeling, they share past lives, they share your Akashic records, they share things that can be quite like, The Council of Eight share truth. Well, this is because we've done everything. We've walked our journeys in every, that's why we're in the simulation. When somebody says to me, I feel like I'm drowning, I'm like, ooh, okay, where have you drowned before? I'm scared of the ocean. Sometimes that might not be here in this lifetime. It might be a past life that you've drowned.
But interesting. And you mentioned and I'm going to ask so that I'm lost on that one. So I just want to prevent the listener. The channel for the Council of Fate, something I'm not that familiar with. So would you care to explain a little bit about that?
I'd love to. So when I was, to just tap back into when we immigrated to New Zealand, I fell to pieces again. I was just lost, alone. We didn't have family. It was a choice, I know that, but I allowed my body to process and I allowed my heart to feel. And it was scary because I'd been on my journey for 11, 12 years already. I'm like, I've got this. I know how to immigrate. It's fine. No, it's just that sense of aloneness again.
Yeah.
And I went back into meditation, and that brought my center of calm. And then I started hearing, which I heard them in South Africa, but I didn't ask questions like, who are you? So when I started to get back into my work again in New Zealand, I do in-person therapy and, working with energy. And the next minute I got these other voices, and I'm like, who are you? Like, am I going mad? Like, what am I hearing? And that's, I think, the first thing that often can happen. Am I going mad? Am I schizophrenic? Like, what am I hearing? And I kept hearing, just stay calm. It's okay. We're here to guide you. And I say, well, who are you? And then I would hear, we're angelic beings of light, ascended masters who've once walked these earth planes. And I'd say, well, who are you? And then I would hear, we come in the formation of Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa, Mother Mary, Jesus. And then I would hear, well, who are you? Like, I would ask these questions all the time. But in my sessions, I started doing these figures of 8, and we're infinite. And I kind of had these visuals of, okay, so are you guys, like, where do you sit? Where do you belong? And they'd say, we're just you. But we're more than that. And we're here to guide you. And I'd say to them, okay, well, can you keep it simple? Because I want to help humans. And they said, this is what they're going to do. Is they're going to guide me. And as I would meditate, my body would start to go really, really cold with the energy coming through. And they asked me to start using music in my therapy, because they showed me that my throat, my portal of light here needed to open up. And I started singing. And I was like, well, I'm just going to channel my inner Lady Gaga because I can't sing.
That's
but the music started to, and I started to sing these big notes, these big songs. So the guidance that was coming through, and it really was coming through, and I had to learn to trust, not them, but myself. And I had to learn to trust the guidance of what was being shared. And it was when I started to channel, and when I do channel, Michelle, the personality takes a sidestep and they talk in the now. And they speak strongly, they speak, and they laugh. They laugh a lot because they want us to be humorous. They want us to not take things personally. So as an example, one time a client was with me and she said, oh, I'm not getting things and I don't understand and I've lost my husband. And they interrupted her and they said, blah, 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 blah. And she stopped. And she emailed me annoyed after our session because I don't remember. She emailed, she said, Michelle, I thought that angels are supposed to be love and compassionate. And I went back to her and I said, okay, what did they say? And she said, this was what was happening. I said, okay, well, did you stop in your story? And she said, yes. And she said, I realized I was being a victim and I forgot to remember how much I've got to be grateful for. And that's what they reminded her, because there was more to the session, not just that. And that's what they reminded her, because our stories, we get stuck in our stories. And this is where they share how powerful we are. And they are so beautiful and humorous, and I love how they share in the now. They share that we've played every role, we've done everything, but none of us ever want to believe that. We're not wanting to take responsibility that if we are, and I say to clients, when you are pointing a finger at somebody who's narcissistic, yes, we don't have to tolerate the behavior, but where are we being narcissistic to ourselves? Or have we been narcissistic before?
Yes.
And I know it might be a hard one to comprehend at times, but, I say I'm not perfect, Leticia. I really am. I mean, I can go into fight sometimes. I'm a mama bear. If you're going to say something to my kids, I'm like, woof, bring it, So I can be fierce. I've got fire in my belly. At the same time, I'm learning to kind of dissolve that fire as best as I can and take a pause. Because being reactive and pointing a finger at somebody else is pointing the fingers at myself. So being human, it is. Being human is so fascinating to me.
Yes, it is. It is definitely a journey, and that's why I enjoy, I guess it's something that's been said many times, but that whole concept of we are spiritual beings having a human experience. I think that once we understand that at the, that in that spiritual beings, that's, it's not just this human experience. It can, it's broader than that. That's already like a big aha moment. It was a big aha moment for me anyway. Although you kind of know we're spiritual, we must come from somewhere.
Yes.
We were somewhere where before coming into this humanly form, but it's just a tough concept to grasp.
Do you have children?
I do have 2 children, yes.
Beautiful. So a simple understanding that I love to offer anyone is when we were pregnant, nobody ever told us, or our mothers were pregnant, or our mothers' mothers were pregnant. Nobody ever said to us, or to the baby, we forgot the mouth. We forgot the heartbeat. Now, my daughter's 22, so when she was born in the UK, they used the Doppler. We saw midwives and they used that little gudu, and that's all we want to hear, the heartbeat. So that is such a beautiful way for me of having the understanding or the, gosh, where did we come from? Nobody ever had to tell us how to grow in the womb. We just did. And whether we call it God, source, knowing, divine, for me, we're so multidimensional. And that's what I truly want to offer is, and this is what the non-speakers are teaching me, is they are just out there in the field. And some of them, for those of you who haven't heard about the telepathy tapes, I highly recommend the telepathy tapes, listening to it, because these children, these adults, these humans teach us how vast we are, because some of them don't even know that they've got a body. And they are brilliant. They are they get frustrated with their bodies because their bodies don't perform like, you and I have an everyday moment. And we do take our bodies for granted. And so the non-speakers are teaching me so much about how we're just out there. And, it's just tweaking the channel, because if we're busy here and we're busy and we've got chaos going in our lives, our body's not on the channel of
Great. Yeah, I get it. And so what would you tell somebody that's listening to you right now? And of course, your webpage would be on our show notes and everything. Like, it will say, well, yeah, I have so much trauma. I know, I recognize it. I just have that all the time. Like, where do you start? Like, it'll say, where do I start? If I had that realization and I want to do something about it.
What a great question. I would recommend starting with breathwork. Starting with a 5-minute meditation, and just breathwork is exactly that, just breathing into your stomach, or breathing, placing your hands on one hand on your heart and one on your stomach. So you've got that base, you've got that touch. And for people who have busy minds, I do this with children. When I see children, is we would sit and I would light a candle. And I would say to him, just watch the candle, watch the flame dance. And then we just bring attention to our breath, keeping the breath below the heart. And just set your timer for 2 minutes even, or 5 minutes, because when we've got trauma, our body wants to move, it's the anxiety, the vibration is like, drr, drr, drr. And we can teach ourselves, which I've seen this time and time again, where clients will tell themselves, but I'm fine, but I'm okay, but I'm fine, but I'm okay. But the anxiety is still running through them, the nervousness, because I was one of those people. I was so in my sympathetic nervous system, hence my body was just flaring up all the time, the bronchitis, the tonsillitis, I would walk at 100 miles. I still do things. As you can see, my hands move quickly, but I have to teach myself. It's in the slowing down. So honestly, just take 5 minutes, set your phone, light a candle if that's going to bring some kind of focus, and then just breathe, just slowly in through the stomach and out through the mouth, and practice it daily. Because I think we've also been led to believe that meditation is, I don't know about you, I still can't do that to this day.
Yeah.
I can do it when I channel, which is great. But if I'm having a busy day and I can feel I'm in my sympathetic nervous system, to tell me, Michelle, just sit, I'd rather go for a walk. Walking's also great. Get the body just moving, but we walk. Just walk and notice what's around you. Take time to notice nature. Go and sit at the water. If you're close to water, just sit. And just notice the birds, notice the insects. There's so much life around us. But when we're in that sympathetic and we're busy, and our heads are busy, we actually do not notice. Observation is key. So when we meditate, just notice our thoughts. These are just simple techniques there's so much overwhelming information out there. And I don't know about you, but I've got like 25 different Instagram recipes on my phone that I'm going to do.
Yes. Well, it's definitely an overwhelming. Yeah. It's a data tsunami, content tsunami, as I call it. It's a content tsunami, and we have to be diligent and intentional about how we, and I always say, well, it's good that it's there, but you have to be disciplined into how you want to use it. And if you use it to advance your goal, objective, or whatever you want to achieve, that's great. If you allow it to just to be dumped into your day, your mind, it's a big problem, because then it's very difficult to get to that state that you just described, even if it's for 5 minutes.
Absolutely. So that would be my suggestion. If somebody's listening to this and says, oh, gosh, I'm really looking for a therapist. Okay, well, by even owning that, you've put it out there on some level. You might have a friend that would say, oh, this therapist is somebody that I've met, or, it really is a feeling for me. It's a feeling to go, so to go back to the hospice weekend, the therapist and the facilitator that chose me and I chose her was the one that I didn't want. But she was the best one for me, one of my biggest teachers. And somewhere in the bigger part of who we are, my light knew that she was a great person to start my journey with. And we do definitely choose people, but start with one thing, as opposed to, because we can have the tsunami of information, and then it just creates more distortion for ourselves, and then it takes us out of harmony in our bodies. So if you're watching someone or resonate with someone, do one thing and stick with that. It's like a practice, going to gym, it takes a while to build the muscle. Practice that. And then stay with that. Stay with what makes you feel good. And then every now and again, if you're feeling a bit icky, then find that therapist again, or find somebody you can talk to. But it's being consciously aware of how we are sharing our stories. That for me is the difference, that makes the difference. Yeah.
Well, that's I think that's great, and I appreciate you for giving practical insights of something that it's actionable for the listeners. And so, as I always say with my guests, I know we can talk for 3 more episodes in a row because I think that we didn't even scratch the surface. But is there anything that excites you as we get to the end of the interview, but that we haven't spoken about? I know, as I said, I'm going to share your contact info, the books that you suggested. Anything else that we didn't speak about in terms of what's exciting you these days?
Gosh, that's another great question. What excites me is to wake up in the morning and know that I'm alive. It's that simple. Really, to just have our breath every morning, to be able to stand up out of bed and just say, wow, how lucky am I to be alive? How lucky am I to be breathing? You know, we're going into the year of the fire horse on the 17th of February. And if you just think of it, fire, rapid, you know, it's clearing, it clears quickly. But the horse just has the most magnificent heart. And that for me is we're in such an exciting time. You know, we've been born for these times. Our souls chose these times to live within. So if we get connected to the negativity, notice. Sometimes I can go down wormholes and then be like, ugh, and I go, no, hold on. What happens if I didn't know this information? What happens if I didn't have social media, which I'm blessed. I think we're blessed to have it. But we can go down these really shitty wormholes sometimes. I can, where I get caught up and then I'm like, actually, what happens if I didn't know this today? How would I live? What would I do? I'm going to stroke my cat. I'm going to go and have a cup of tea or coffee and I'm going to enjoy it. We forget how to enjoy life. So if you just hear those words, enjoy. And thank you for allowing me to share where I've come from, because I wasn't in joy for a long, long, long time. But I know that we can refine and discover who we are.
Well,
because it's about being in joy.
Well, and I thank you for sharing. I mean, if anybody, I know, kudos to our common friend Nina, because she always suggests the best guests. But she knows it's like it's people that have gone through extreme trauma, incredible experiences and I'm grateful that you share, because somebody out there has been living with the same thing and probably allowing that very bad, unfortunate experience to victimize them, which of course it's unfortunate those things happen, but just the fact that you hear somebody like you taking power back, and it's just amazing, so that you out there know that you can decide what to do with those experiences. And I love what you said. You know, this is not happening to you, it's happening for you. And that's such a powerful concept that I think if we focus on that, then we can definitely rewrite our stories. So I do thank you for being part of Back to Basics.
Thank you.
And I know that I'm not the only one inspired by this conversation. So to all of you out there, thanks for joining, and check out Michelle's webpage. And until a new episode of Back to Basics.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Leticia. Bye.
You've been listening to Back to Basics. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. If you haven't yet, subscribe, rate, and review this podcast on Apple Podcast or any of your favorite streaming platforms. This is the best gift you can give us. Join me next week for another Back to Basics conversation. And if you want to find out about other exciting things I'm working on, visit LeticiaLatino.com. Thank you, and until the next time.